Hey everybody, Matt Barton here with this week's Broker Minute or Two. Yes, I'm sporting the total professional look this morning. I actually have a family function today, so I want to get this off before I embark on that. So, we get a lot of questions about deal making, right? Hey, I have a scenario where the deal works, but we're a little bit off on pricing, and the seller isn't willing to pay, as much compensation because we're down $20,000 on price. And there's 100 scenarios like this, right? And I don't want to trivialize that, but we want to make sure that we understand if we're going to make an adjustment, for instance, to an ERS, and I will talk on the second half of this about the EBBA, that we do it in the most intelligent way. So let me just share with you what we see a lot of, and it's this, right? If we need to reduce commissions in the brokerage fee section 2.1 from 3% to 2.5%, seems like this is pretty straightforward, right? Brokerage fee, and that's what we see in an addendum. Brokerage fee section 2.1 to be reduced from 3% to 2.5%. Yeah, that'll get it done, but there's some unintended consequences. What if the buyer that we're doing a deal with cancels on due diligence and we're back to finding a new buyer? We have now changed the ERS for all buyers by using this language. Okay, so the recommendation in here is to do a more intelligent approach, and this is the same verbiage as up above, but add this portion, right? Only on an accepted offer, that's the first condition, for the buyer's name such and such, with a REPSI dated such and such. The purpose for that additional verbiage is if that buyer that is supposedly the reason why we have to make an adjustment on the ERS compensation, if they go away and we're relegated to finding buyer number two, then we revert back to the old ERS language where we're being paid 3%. So that's why we would want to use this language. Seems pretty straightforward, but we see this all the time. And I think sometimes it's just because we're not, as agents, not thinking down the road of what could happen, and coupled with being in a hurry is quite often the case. So when I explain this to agents, they're like, oh, yeah, I really should be doing that. So I just wanted to pass this on to the whole company. Now, when it comes to the buyer broker agreement, there are some questions about, buyers going, oh, well, I don't know if I want to sign a buyer broker for 3% because what happens if the seller's only offering 2% or 1.5% or 2.5%? So I wanted to show you really quickly the mechanics of this. I'm in SkySlope forms, okay? And if you have a template, the form may already be there, but I have this test file that I use all the time. And if it's not there, I'm going to say, yeah, you know what? I want to add a form to demonstrate this point. I'm just going to type in blank. Let me see here. Where are we here? Exclusive right to sell. Okay, here we go. Exclusive addendum to the exclusive right to sell, right? So we all know this. This is a blank one. And yeah, this is the one we want to use. So I'm going to go ahead and click and say add. And then we go to next. And then we see it is in there. And I'm going to say, yeah, that's the one I want to work on, right? It's actually this one. Nope, it's this one. Wow, doing this real time. Embarrassing. Okay, so once we do that and we click fill and send, we come in and it's blank. And it's like, okay, so what am I supposed to write? Just remember, anytime you go in to fill the blank portion of it, you have the ability to add clauses, right? And we've taken some very common use case and created standard type language. So if we click add clauses, this very first one, top of the list, is exclusive buyer broker agreement addendum when the seller compensation is short of what is in our buyer broker agreement. So if I click on that, it's going to allow me to add the clause. It's going to show you the verbiage that's in there and say, yep, that's the one I want, and click save. And this is the one where it gives us flexibility. It should reassure your clients. Let's read it really quickly. The company, Remax Associates, and the buyer agree that the cooperative compensation paid to this paid by the seller or the seller's brokerage on a successfully closed transaction will satisfy the buyer's obligation to the company, provided, here's the condition, the amount is equal to or greater than 2% and 295, which is known as the company minimum. Any amount less than that company minimum will be the responsibility of the buyer at closing. So if it was 1.5% they're paying, then the buyer's going to need to bring 0.5% and 295 to closing. Now, I get this question with this language on a somewhat regular basis. If there's a scenario where it's a domino transaction, as we call it, 4 or 5 transactions, 2 or 3 transactions, and we need to go below 2%, we'll work with you on it. We just need to make sure that the business calculus works. But for most situations, that is the company minimum. And there's verbiage that hopefully you can present that to your client and say, so even though we have 3% in the exclusive buyer broker agreement, as long as what the seller offers doesn't fall below 2% and 295, you have no obligation to the company, because what the seller's offering will make us whole. So what it does is it actually gives you and the company a window for buyer compensation. The example I use is there's a builder down in St. George, I think it's S&S Homes, that always offers 4%. If your buyer broker agreement doesn't say 4%, we're only going to be able to pay you per the national settlement what is on your buyer broker agreement. So you can imagine a scenario where you put 4% in the buyer broker agreement, and all of a sudden your buyers get big eyes. Add this verbiage in an addendum and explain to them how it works, that as long as the compensation is above 2%, they don't owe us anything, 2% and 295. So I hope that helps you guys in your day-to-day transactions, and I hope you have a great rest of the week, and we'll talk soon.